Welcome to All Nature Connected, a podcast created by the Forest Bathing Institute, where we explore all nature-connected topics, including nature and health, nature-inspired lifestyle, nature connection and forest bathing, nature preservation, and eco-awareness. We hope that this podcast will inspire you to become more connected with nature and your own health and well-being.
So hello everyone, this is Olga from the Forest Bathing Institute, and today we have Nicky from Sound and Ground joining us for an interview. Hello Nicky.
Good morning, Olga. It's lovely to be here with you.
Lovely being with you too. And I just wanted to introduce you to our listeners because I think you have wonderful story of how you came to forest bathing and also who you are, what you do. So Nicky from Sound and Ground is a qualified forest bathing guide, meditation teacher specializing in Yoga Nidra and EcoNidra, and trained sound therapy practitioner. Based on the Norfolk Suffolk border in the UK, Nicky shares many supportive practices for deep rest and often combines all of her therapies in events such as forest sound baths, where nature and sound therapy meet. She's a mom to one nature-loving wilding who inspired her on her journey deepening her connection with nature. In fact, a complete career change from corporate recruiter to wellness practitioner. And together they enjoy regular sessions at a local forest school. And Nicky is also a trained forest school assistant and a true advocate for forest school and nature immersion for parents and little ones. She is passionate about partnering with nature and offering sound therapy to help her clients better manage the stresses of life. So Nicky, it's really great to have you on our podcast. And what you're doing, to me, it sounds incredible. Gary and I are both trained in sound therapy, but we have never done events combining forest bathing and sound therapy. And whenever I look at your beautiful Instagram or any social media that you have, I see these beautiful pictures of people relaxing in nature with sound and after the forest bathing bath. So we really want to learn a little bit more about what it entails. So it sounds so magical. So please walk us through the process. What happens during the forest sound bath?
Thanks, Olga, yes, for this opportunity. And as you know, I am super passionate about all of the practices that I offer, and I feel that they all bring their own unique benefits. And so one of my favorite places to play my sound therapy instrument for my own practice is in nature, because you kind of get the double benefits, if you like. So we know we get the benefits from being immersed in that natural environment, and then the benefits of receiving the sound and the frequencies of the instruments. So it seemed a very natural evolution to me to take my sound bath out to the forest. So a forest sound bath is pretty much, I think, what it says on the tin. But basically, I take my clients out to a beautiful spot in nature where we are surrounded by the forest. And I'm very blessed here to be in the heart of Thetford Forest with many thousands of acres and hectares of beautiful, pristine forest to take my practice out to. So we're kind of spoilt for choice, I must say. And I have a variety of sites, and they all offer something different. And most recently, I've even been able to offer hammock sound baths in the forest, which is another level of relaxation. But yeah, on the most basic level, it's to come to that forest atmosphere, immerse yourself. You've then got the option as well of grounding and earthing as you enjoy your sound bath. So you might let your feet or your hands come to the side of your mat and physically have that contact with your skin and the earth. And then it's just the case of lying back, receiving, and taking that journey with the sounds to see where they take you. And as you do, we've got, you know, the natural soundscape working with me, pairing with the instruments, so the sound of the wind in the trees, the bird song, and often in the beginning of my sound baths, I always infuse them with a Yoga Nidra at the beginning. So, you know, we can bring in those sensory elements of feeling the touch of the breeze on your skin, or maybe the sun, or the coolness of the shade. So it really does weave everything together. And I believe it offers something that's quite, you know, unique and restorative for clients. And for many, they say that they just feel so grounded afterwards. And then, of course, when I gently bring them back at the end, they're coming back to this amazing view of either looking up at the canopy or the birds in the trees around us. And yeah, obviously I'm biased, but I think it's quite hard to beat.
No, it does sound magical. And I'm just thinking about laying down in a hammock and looking up at the canopy of the trees and listening to the sound of the gong and the sound of the birds and the wind on my skin. It just feels such a treat. So definitely, when we are up there in your direction, I would love to give it a try. And I think if you guys are there, please do have a go and let me know how it is, because I'm really excited to hear how it goes for you. And I know from what we've been talking about, you had a career in human resources or something similar before, and then you completely changed what you're doing to sound healing and forest bathing. So I know that this change might have occurred around the time that you had your little one, but let me know how this transition happened, because I'm sure that we have a few people listening to us now who might be in their corporate career and maybe thinking about transition or changing something in their lives. And I think that will be really useful and interesting for them to hear about your experience.
Yes, my pleasure to share it. Really, it's quite the quantum leap, I think, between worlds in some ways. But I had a very established yoga, particularly practice. It was more rooted initially in the really physical side of yoga when I had my corporate career, sort of going back really to the early 90s, to be honest. It was a good way to let go of all the stress. You know, the corporate world I found quite challenging, lots of targets, commuting by train, you know, working long hours, and I needed a way to manage that stress. So first turned to physical yoga, then I discovered practices like sound and Yoga Nidra, and those were revelations for me, because I was one of those people with a really chatty mind, and I struggled with traditional seated meditation. Found I'd come away feeling like I'd failed at it and was really frustrated because I just couldn't do it. I couldn't seem to get the internal dialogue to quieten down. And so I my first sound bath, I just remember thinking, what is this? You know, it was like someone had turned off my mental chatter, and that's the first time in a long time. So those were my go-to practices, essentially, is what I'm saying, before I ever considered doing it for a living, which I really hadn't up until that point. But I had, as you said, I had my little one right in the middle of the first COVID lockdown, though it pains me to say the C word. It was a difficult time for so many of us. And definitely, you know, had we known what was coming, there's no way we could have known to be having your first child in the middle of all of that. It was, you know, really very, very challenging. And essentially, I think I would sum it up in saying that those challenges became a catalyst for change in my life. It gave me, for the first time to actually really truly slow down and notice both how I was feeling in my body and mind, but also what was going on in the natural world around me. So just to sort of summarize it because it's probably almost a whole podcast on its own, but I had very, very severe postpartum anxiety, which kind of hit me like a ton of bricks, because I'd never really experienced anxiety in that way up till then. And I then had that coupled with a baby who was just very, very screamy. I don't really know any other way to describe it. She's always been a very intense, demanding baby, but she didn't sleep well, she didn't feed well, and she just cried a lot of the day and night, which was quite distressing. And obviously, being as it was COVID times, there was no help available. We never met a health visitor in our whole postpartum journey. And there was no feeding support available, and all the in-person services were just shut, and you were very on your own with it. So being as we're so close to the forest, and it was one of the only places we could go, as we all experienced, nature was open and everywhere else was closed, right? So I ended up taking her out 3 times a day for her naps, because she needed to be in perpetual motion for her naps. And my whole world, without overplaying it, my whole world changed, because suddenly I was out in nature for extended periods of time every single day, no matter what the weather. I have photos and memories of us being bundled up in, minus temperatures and freezing cold winds, but we were going because we knew we needed it. And so it was, all the snow suits and windproof rain covers and everything, thermals for me, and we were out, and I was not only moving slowly in nature, pushing the buggy at a certain desired speed that she needed to stay asleep, for 3 times a day, every day, for all of her naps. And I was noticing, purple mushrooms. Who knew there were purple mushrooms? When you're cooped up in an office all day, you don't necessarily see that. Maybe you go for a walk at the weekend with your friends, but you're chatting, or you've got the dog, or you've got the little ones, and you're not noticing those details. And from there, really just snowballed this journey of curiosity, just deepening my connection with nature. And it was profound to notice how it soothed my anxiety almost immediately, and also how she would then stop crying and have this really great sleep when we were out in the forest. And to be perfectly honest, I don't think at that point I knew the term Shinrin-yoku or forest bathing, but I knew that this was profound, and I knew I had to explore it. So I looked into it and realised that there was training available, that this was actually a wellbeing practice in its own right. And I guess that, coupled with how I found Yoga Nidra so helpful to survive the sleep deprivation. Obviously, sound baths in person were off, but I was listening online during COVID. And I would say, without over exaggerating, these practices really saved me and helped me to survive one of the most darkest sort of chapters in my life. And I felt truly compelled to pass these benefits on to others. And so through that journey of challenges came these opportunities to just change everything and retrain and look at a completely different way of being.
Wow, thank you so much for sharing, Nicky. It's like when you talked, I think, as you said, our kids are similar age, and remembering that time in COVID when you felt absolutely on your own. You couldn't see your family, you couldn't see your friends, you couldn't go to any groups. Same as you, we did have only 2 visits from health practitioners to help us on our journey, and we had no clue how to do it and what was happening, if we were doing it right or wrong, or whether it's okay for baby to cry all the time and not sleep at all. And it brings shivers to my body. It brings like absolute sense of terror in a way, because I remember myself in that point. And I remember how, same as you, if I didn't have nature, and we were very lucky to live just on the edge of the woods, if we didn't have nature and we didn't, like you, go out there for hours, like twice we were going a day, and also spend time in the garden. I'm not really even sure how we would cope with that. And I know even people who, without kids during COVID, lots of anxieties came up. Of course, situation was so scary, and for many of us, there were also losses, family losses, and we were probably suffering with health issues. And coming to something that you can actually find is helpful for you and help yourself, and find that resource in yourself to help yourself through nature, through modality like Yoga Nidra or sound therapy, and then build up a strength to actually even help others on this, with this. It just, I really applaud you, because I just I really feel it, and I think it's such a massive journey of self-discovery. Plus you have your little one, plus you have your family, and now you have the whole community. So many people look up to you, they come to your sessions, they feel that what you're doing is really helping them. So it's such a beautiful journey of transformation. And I know that these years, the COVID years, I think many of us still are coming through this trauma of what happened. We're not even sure how it happened, why it happened, etc. But there's still this feeling of, we did it. We might not be able to describe how we did it, but there is strength in us to overcome it. There was strength in us to overcome it. And I think for me, same as you, I thank nature, because if not for nature, I think the situation could have been much, much worse. And knowing that nature has such a powerful ability to help others when we need it, we can rely on it. And even our little ones feel different in nature. This is such a beautiful thing to share with others. So thank you very much. It means a lot. And what coming out of that, I wanted to ask you, how do you actually take care of yourself now? I know that for that COVID period, it probably was a case of survival. As you said, you probably wouldn't have survived without nature. Hopefully now things, as we are getting out of COVID, some might say we are out of it, but hopefully the situation is not as pressurized, and maybe your little one is a bit better sleeping and eating and other things now. But it's still difficult. I mean, I think life of every parent, even non-parent, just every person, I don't know a person whose life is easy these days. So at the pace of life, and I think many people now suffering from anxiety just because of the pace of life, how fast things are, and all the expectations from us on different fronts, financial, social, even responsibilities for the environment, would say. For those who are more conscious, it might add another pressure. So could you talk a little bit about how you take care of yourself in this maybe uncertain, challenging times? Because I really love to know, as a practitioner myself, but also because I feel that when I look at your social media, I really feel that you take your self-care first, and I really appreciate it. And then out of that space where you've taken care of yourself, you share with others. And I think that's a beautiful ethos to hold on to as a practitioner. First taking care of ourselves, and then learning to take care of ourselves and passing that knowledge on to others. So if you could please share, that would really be great.
Yeah, absolutely. Really, a lot of what you're saying really does resonate with me. Life is full for so many of us, and I'm certainly not the kind of person that tries to promote an illusion of my life being this perfect, peaceful bubble, because let's be real here, life is challenging for everyone, as you said. And although the seasons of my life, which I do find it helpful to look at it in that way, just like in nature, nature goes through the cycle of different seasons, and each season brings its own unique challenges and parts that may be different or easier to the previous season or the next. Life feels very much the same. So though we've moved on from COVID times, I found myself since then in what we call the sandwich generation. So I'm raising a young toddler, but I'm also been caring for elderly parents. In fact, I lost one of my parents in June of this year, so I've had a bereavement as well. And yes, watching my parents my parent go this way and my toddler progress this way, it's been a challenging time, with some things getting easier and other things making more demands of me simultaneously. So self-care has had to come right up to the top almost of my list of priorities to prioritize it, because I almost feel like when you feel you don't have time for these practices, that's when you need them the most. And so in order for me to have anything to give to others, whether that's my clients, my parents, my little one, I have to have that fullness in me first. So it is a challenge, but I would say to anyone else struggling with it, that prioritizing that self-care is the most important thing you can do, because if you want to help others, you have to help yourself first. It's just the way of things. So it's a lesson I've had to learn, and it's still challenging every day to make that space. I would say that my personal practice, forest bathing, sound, yoga nidra, meditation, whatever you want to choose, pick from that list, has become essential, really essential to surviving and thriving and being able to carry on sharing these practices with others. So lots of time in the forest, which has been slightly easier with my little one going to nursery now. That's created some space and some time for that. So any opportunity I get, I'll just take myself off. There's no phone reception, so it's a break in that way as well from the endless stream of notifications, and a break from looking at a screen, which is heavenly, I will admit. So regular time in the forest, my own forest bathing practice, and that's really important, I think, as you would know as a guide anyway, to be fully in tune with what's present now in each season and each week of each season. So that you can embody that, and then you can share that with your clients in the most authentic and therapeutic way. Nature has been the most amazing container for grief. It's just so soothing, and I could talk for hours about it, but that's probably all I will say, is that if you are experiencing any form of grief or bereavement, then nature will look after you really beautifully. It's just creating that space to go out there and be present in nature. And yes, quite often I'm seen disappearing into the forest like a little ninja turtle with my gong on my back. I think the last time we spoke, I said, oh, I'm just in the forest playing my gong, which might sound unusual to some, but it's the best form of therapy and self-care for me. Of course, if I don't have a chunk of time, a 20-30 minute yoga nidra, lying down, it is amazing as a boost. That practice is so restorative. In fact, in the training I did, and in many other places that we talk about, an hour of yoga nidra being as effective as potentially 3 to 4 hours of sleep in terms of the restorative effects on our body. And that's, not to be sniffed at. So when you're sleep deprived, whether you're a busy mum or someone who struggles with sleep, that practice is a beautiful go-to for just, even if you've only got 15-20 minutes in your day, to carve out that time for a nidra. Beautiful. Well, you feel so much better after. And I think the other thing to say, which again can be a bit taboo, is having an established talking therapy as your own self-care when you are looking after others and you're holding space for others. It's really important, I feel. And so I have my therapist, I've been talking to her for years, and we have a free weekly meeting, and it's just such a useful non-judgmental space to talk about what's going on in your inner world. And again, to declutter that, leaving you free with that space and lighter to hold space for your clients after. So I definitely recommend that in addition.
That's beautiful, Nikki, and thank you so much for sharing, because I think it's interesting that you said it's taboo, because I have interviewed people from different countries, and in some countries I can definitely see it's a more accepted form of therapy. It's the same as, you know, you go for a yoga class for your health and well-being, you will have a talking therapist to talk through your emotions, because I think lots of people who get drawn to therapy or helping others, they quite often are very sensitive in their nature. And that's kind of the other side of the medal. With the sensitivity comes the need to take more care of ourselves, to nurture ourselves. And I think if we forget about it, normally we would tend to be maybe a bit more depleted than a normal person would, who maybe is not as sensitive. We kind of have thinner skin, which is an advantage and also a disadvantage sometimes as practitioners and therapists. So knowing how important it is to take care of yourself and finding the means that work for you. And I think you did share a few wonderful ones, like Yoga Nidra, 20 minutes during the day, just take a break. I just talked on the social media about just go out into nature, even 5-10 minutes, have that break, just change your mindset. There is, of course, breathing, and we have some people in our team who are breathing experts. So it's exploring yourself and finding what works best for you. And you know, and it's like in nature. I love how I've read in a book actually by my Ayurveda teacher recently, how nature is not pretentious. It just is, you know. In autumn it is bare and maybe it's starting to lose its luster, it loses its leaves. Maybe the grass gets dry and brown. In winter it's absolutely bare, and it just stands there bare and magnificent, non-pretentious. It's not trying to grow daffodils in winter when it needs to just be bare and vulnerable and slow and silent. You know, sometimes you go in the forest in winter, it's absolutely silent. There is no you know, joy, that artificial joy. It just needs to be silent, quiet, and even sometimes somber, and these dark colors need to be there. So just allowing ourselves that space to be that way sometimes. And if we need some help, get some help. If we need to take a break, because who said that we are living, you know, we should be living how we are, you know, maybe some media is showing us we should be living fast all the time, achieving something. Who said it? I don't think it's right. And in fact, I see lots of indications that it is not right. It's not healthy. That's not how things are in nature. And we might be actually be our worst enemy just by pushing ourselves too hard and not allowing ourselves space. And I think it's very, I really appreciate that you talked about your perspective as a practitioner and a therapist, how important it is for you to take care of yourself, and then out of the authentic place, then take care of others. Because I think that's really where you can share the full power of the therapy and the practice. So thank you very much, Nikki. And thank you for sharing today. We will close today's discussion on this note, but I'm sure there'll be more interviews going in the future, because I found your sharing fascinating, and I'm sure our listeners would love to learn more about what you do, your self-care, maybe some of the practices that you do. But if you could just share in the last couple of minutes where we can find more information about you. I know that you were recently featured on BBC Radio 4, so I know there is a replay. available still, and also where we can find your events, where we can find a little bit more about what you're offering.
Yes, certainly. Thank you. So my socials, I'm on all the usual places, Instagram, Facebook, Sound and Ground, and then website soundandground.co.uk, and from there you can link through to my book when schedule, which will show you in chronological event all of my events, from forest bathing to sound therapy and yoga nidra and everything in between, seasonal celebrations as well. So yeah, if anybody is local and would like to come along, absolutely love to see you there. And if anybody's got any questions about anything that I mentioned, then absolutely a warm invitation to just reach out to me. More than happy to chat with you or further explain anything that I've talked about in this podcast. But thank you so much, Olga, for having me. It's been such a lovely time to spend with you.
Thank you, Nicky. It was really my pleasure to have you on the podcast, and I hope we will have future podcasts to look forward to.